Hi, everybody. This is Tammy with VA to VA. We have our panel and we have a special guest, Mark Hunter, with us. We're so excited to talk to us about websites. I'm going to just let everybody introduce themselves. As I said, I'm Tammy with Tammy's Office Solutions, and we are a multi-VA company offering a wide variety of services, including bookkeeping, virtual assistant services, digital marketing, as well as writing services. And I'm going to hand it over to Lisa. Introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Cole with Augusta Virtual Assistants. I'm coming to you remote from a different location than my office today. And because you are seeing my photo instead of my actual face, I did not pack my external camera when I came remote. So at any rate, I own and manage a team of virtual assistants out of Augusta, Georgia, and we help business owners with real estate, transaction management. We help attorneys with their back-end paralegal processes, and a wide array of other business support for business owners. That includes social media, website design, general administrative, and such as that. So thank you for coming and listening to us and learning more about websites with Mr. Hunt.
Nanette, you're muted. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
I'm Nanette Telemak of In Essence Virtual Assistants out of Newberry, New Hampshire, and I provide generalist support to small businesses and busy professionals, and that encompasses administrative, marketing, graphic design, and multimedia creation, sales and marketing, digital marketing and sales. So that's what I do. I have a team, a small team that I plan on growing so that I can scale up my business and cover all those four areas that I support. And that's me.
And for those of you who follow us regularly, I just have to tell you, Nanette is finally full-time, out of working full-time into working for her business full-time, and we just have to congratulate her because we're so excited. She's worked so hard for this. So I just have to mention that to those that follow us because I know they'll be excited for you as well. And then we want to introduce our special guest, Mark. We're so excited, and he is really sacrificing to come on because it is 2:30 in the morning there in Australia, and he's just wonderful in coming on with us. Mark, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, please, so others know, and then we'll get started.
Sure, thanks, Tammy. It's great to be here. So I'm from Australia, you can probably tell from the accent, and I run Markup Approved Web and Marketing. I build websites for mostly service-based providers and coaches, although I do extend to other niches when required. And yeah, that's pretty much my story.
Great. And I know Nanette's going to lead us in so we can get started on those questions because I know we have a lot for you today, Mark. And we hope the audience, I just want to say, if anybody's watching, please also post questions in the chat because we will be getting to those as well. Thanks, Nanette.
Yes, well, you know, it's funny that I'm glad we're doing this because it turned out that 2 days ago, someone posted on one of the VA Facebook pages, do I need a website? You know, can I just do Facebook? And, you know, even though Facebook is great, if you're building a business, your small business needs to have credibility. And the only way you're going to get credibility is and seen as a legitimate business is to have a website. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, today more and more consumers use the internet to search for products and services they need. And your small business will gain that credibility from those consumers and business people looking for you by having a website. Without one, potential customers will go to your competitors. Okay, so, and you don't want that if you're trying to build a clientele. A website is the most powerful tool for communication. And it's a unique way to connect with the world, whether you choose to create a website, to share your passion for music or whatever, or for business as we do, to sell our services. There are no boundaries of what you can do with a website, and it's a wonderful way of getting your message out. So today, we're going to discuss about what makes a good website for individuals as well as for multimedia, multi-virtual companies like ourselves. And we're going to start it off with Lisa. The first question to Mark.
All right. Our first question for you, Mark, is since you told us a little bit about your background already and how you got started, so what do you consider a website to be used for?
Okay, well, let me plug my earphones in here. They keep falling out. Well, a website, I believe, is as sorry, I can't remember the names of everybody. I'm so silly. But a website is a great credibility building tool. That's what I fully believe. It depends on what niche you're in. But if you're in like the virtual assistant business, then you really do want to have a website in order to get out there, build your authority, your credibility. You can do endless things like blogging, you have testimonials. And when I was actually working on Upwork without a website, people would sometimes not employ me because they didn't have that online presence of my own. So it's very powerful when you're looking for work as well.
All right. Very good. Next question would be, what should one consider before building their website?
Okay, so I'm a big proponent of planning, although I do realize you have to take some action. But there's 4 main areas I like to look at before building a website. And that is to have your bigger picture, to understand your goals of your website, to have some content strategy in place, like understand the pages and the what goes on the pages, not necessarily all up front, but just have an overall idea. You need to understand some design from a visual aspect point of view. Like if you have sometimes people, when they go to build a website, they don't know where to begin. And a lot of that can be not knowing even how to start it visually. And the 4th one is the requirements. You need to know the requirements so you can choose the right platform for you. Now, I will mention that just briefly that with the first strategy, the content overall strategy, sorry, I'll just give you a few ideas for that. You might include, let's say, your positioning factor. Like, what are you experienced, highly experienced? Do you have popularity in social media, etc.? In your headlines, etc. You might include your unique value proposition. You might include things like who you serve, what problem you solve. All that sort of stuff can definitely be an important consideration. Because if you try and start a website without understanding why you're starting a website, then you're just going to be running an uphill battle.
Mark, you bring up a really good point. I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask, could you explain to the audience value proposition so that all of those who are in our audience understand that as well? Excuse me, Lisa, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, what I look at value proposition is positioning yourself in the marketplace for something that you do in your own unique marketplace. For example, you might be the best, the only. You might be a one-stop workshop. You could be there's just some examples. You might have some more examples, Tammy, but you could be a specialist in a certain technology. So that's like your value proposition, whereas positioning is more personal, to do with your experience and your internal assets as like a, what would you say, a person yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I think it's so important that people understand that. And often, I would say a lot of times I see those in taglines as well, ends up being their tagline. So yeah, thank you so much for understanding that. I think Lisa has a couple more questions.
Sure.
I agree about the value proposition as well. It's different than your, necessarily your skill sets. It's answering the pain points. It's showing that potential client how they can take that stress away, how you can take that stress away, and you can bring that across on your website. So I have one other question. I know you specialize in WordPress. So if you would expand on why you prefer WordPress websites.
Well, there's basically, at a basic level, there's a simple ease of use. I think it's very simple to get a handle on compared to something like Joomla. I don't know if you're familiar with Joomla, but I've used that and it's very complicated. It's also something that you own. Well, by that, it's open source. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's not proprietary software like Wix, that you don't have access to the data that you might need to get export later on if you can. I like the fact that there's a big community and that there's so many different plugins available for WordPress. That's my favorite thing, the plugins and the themes. I mean, I just love the functionality. You can hook onto it. I don't know any other platform like it really that has that much flexibility.
It's interesting that you bring up different platforms though too, because I have clients who will come to me with like a Wix. They've started their website on there. And I'm just throwing this up, but what do you think about something like that versus WordPress?
I don't want, like, I understand people have their preferences. I do feel that you can actually pay for Wix, right? So I'm not a big knowledgeable on Wix, but I do know you can actually pay for it. But I do feel that it has some limitations in terms of how scalable and how, what's the other word I'm looking for, flexible it can be. I don't think you can extend it as highly as WordPress, but by that same token, it probably is a bit comfortable for people because it's like, sometimes it's free, but the other comforting thing for people is, let me just get my thought here.
Oh, it's okay.
I
know sometimes they require, like, I think for the free one, I'm not fully informed on it either. I'm still, looking into that, but because of a client. But I think some require that you keep the Wix name in the URL unless you pay for it in separate hosting, I believe. And that to me is a problem because I certainly wouldn't want a client not be able to leave and have their own URL.
You talk about subdomains like wix.yourdomain.com. Yes,
right.
I think if you have a free Wix account, that's the case. I'm not sure if you're actually allowed to have your URL in there, like what you just mentioned. You might be able to buy a URL and hook it in using certain technologies. I'm not 100% sure on that with Wix, but somebody else might know on the panel.
Sure.
I do. I have a client that's currently building his website off of Wix, and I am in another capacity with his business, and he had already begun this before working with me. He can have his domain name, but I am finding, because he's a realtor and I work with a lot of real estate websites who need that MLS feed to come through their website to show listings, that Wix has their limitations, and it's not as good of quality. So I mean, yeah, there are limitations to it.
Yeah, I know they have widgets and things that people can move around, and I think for some people, I guess, who couldn't afford a full-on build and they don't know WordPress, maybe that's the attraction, but I would certainly recommend paying for separate hosting and having your URL, wouldn't you, Mark?
Definitely, I totally agree with that. If you're going to invest, you need to invest in your business if you're going to run one.
I didn't mean to throw that at you. It's just, I know a lot of people do consider that. And so, I felt like I wanted to just broaden it a little bit. So I didn't mean to throw that out at you, Mark.
I actually do use it. A lot of CMSs, as they're called. I find them to be flexible and easy to use. And for the customers that I have who will take it over, I want something that has a dashboard that's not going to be complicated for them. I don't know much about Wix, but if I use Weebly a lot. I find that to be fairly flexible, and they have a lot of plugins and widgets that you could add to it. And then if necessary, and I think this is true for most CMSs, although you're not going to be supported by the company, but there is a way of getting in for coding if you have something very unique to do in it. And then I just have my coder do it, if it's something unique for the customer because I'm not a coder. So I have a customer that has WordPress, so I have a basic knowledge of it, but as much, I find it a little frustrating. But I understand that it's powerful and has all these plugins, and you can do a lot with it. I just haven't had the opportunity to play with it as much as I would like, except for managing my customer's website, and so I'm getting a feel of how it works. But it was to me, it was a little bit of a more a learning curve than with a Weebly. That's my experience.
I think WordPress definitely has a higher learning curve. I think you're right with that. However, that once you do gain that knowledge, it's so valuable to be able to help our clients. But yeah, and I hadn't heard that about Weebly. I know with my client with Wix, they do have that content management type ability, emailing, and all of those kinds of things. But as Mark said, I love the plugins and WordPress too. But do we have to be careful of those, Mark? I know sometimes some of them are kind of buggy, or what kind of things will we need to look at with plugins?
It can be very hard for a non-developer to understand if a plugin is not good, so it's best to look at reviews and feedback from others. The problem with WordPress can be there are a lot of buggy plugins, and even in the WordPress.org directory, there's some plugins that can slow your site down. So I always say being scalable is not necessarily about having too many plugins that slows your site down. It's more or less the wrong plugins, and that's what I hold to believe, and as an educated, from my point of view. So it's not like I'm making it up, but yeah.
No, I know. Well, you're an expert in the field, so I always like to know these things. Because you see one plugin, it says it does this wonderfully, and then another that does the same thing but different. And right now I've got to clean up a lot of mine too, because it's been a learning process. But yeah, so I was curious as to how you could tell if one might have, been built differently and has more bugs. And I know, reviews are awesome. Everybody looks at reviews now for it too.
There's also a plugin called P3 Profile by GoDaddy. If you guys heard of that, it's a plugin that actually allows you to see. It's not always totally representative, but it'll allow you to see which plugin's slowing your site down the most.
Oh, and what is it called again?
It's called P3 Profiler.
Oh, great.
And the other thing is you can pretty much tell if whenever I activate a plugin or a few plugins, I'll definitely have a few clicks around on the site and see if there's been any real performance inhibiting.
Sure.
And that's just a rule of thumb, but I found a few plugins I thought were good that, did slow it down. So it's good to always be vigilant.
Yeah, so true, so true. Thank you. That was, some great information. Now, tell us, please, what is the difference between a web designer and a web developer?
Okay, so a web developer generally works more with higher-end code, although a web designer can work with code, but not at the same level generally as a web developer. A web developer has at times been a bit of an umbrella term, I've found, in terms that some people who are web designers would call themselves web developers. But I'll just give you an example. I'm a web developer. I've learned how to code, self-taught through online courses. And if somebody gives me a Photoshop file, I can actually do a web design with it using the code of CSS, or I can code some plugins using PHP. Whereas a web designer, they're really good at putting something in the head, conceptualizing something very creatively, and then just spewing it out onto the canvas of the website.
Excellent, because and I think I can understand what you say when you say about seeing it in your head and imagining it and then putting it out there. That's kind of how I work, I think, sometimes. And considering I don't know code, that's not an area, there's always so much to learn out there that I don't think it's necessary for me to learn code. And if we do get into an issue, then that's where I reach out to somebody like you who is a developer and who can go deeper than I can.
Yeah, the definition is definitely a bit blurred, but that's pretty much what I believe your definition to be in traditional sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you do design?
We do. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was asking, Tom, do you do design as well as develop, do the development, or are you?
Yes, I have taught myself design skills. I mean, it's something I believe you can learn, and it's something I have learned. I'm very scientific about my design approach, but at the same time, people seem to like my work, so
good.
It speaks for itself, I guess.
Yes, but I do think we have to know our limitations, and so just especially because we're talking about virtual, for the most part, virtual assistant companies or companies working with a team, and when we get to the point of not really fully understanding what we're doing, then I think, that's when we need to reach out. Did I lose you guys?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I thought I lost everybody. Sorry about that. And then we wanted to ask too, what is static and dynamic web pages, please?
Okay, so in the old days, if any of you remember the term Dreamweaver, that was a lot of people use that to build static web pages, which meant they built each web page was a file. So for each web page, you required a file, and every time you made a change to that web page, you would have to actually go to that file and update that file, and it was very tedious. A dynamic website is where code's involved and databases are involved, where you can actually pull the data from the database into the page, and it compiles it. The server compiles it on the spot. So to know if you're using it, have a static website, most people don't these days. You would actually be coding all the content onto an individual page by page. It's very tedious.
Thank you. That's awesome. Nanette, I think you have some questions. I don't want to hog his time. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I do, and I'm sorry. I have to. It's very hard for me to reach the unmute button, but I got it. So, I had questions about like if somebody wants to get started, say they want to at least have a presence, and they want to at least they're just starting out. What would be your tips for them in regards to like finding a platform, how to even get started? What would you suggest?
Well, first of all, they have to understand their requirements, what they actually need in a website. So are we talking about getting started as a website builder, or as building your own website, or as building a website for somebody else as a service?
So say someone just starting out with their business, and they want to just make sure that they have something that's going to give them credibility. How would they even get started? I think sometimes some people just get inertia because the thought of it just overwhelms.
Well, interesting you said that, because recently I've created a worksheet which actually helps people get past that inertia. And one of the sections of the worksheet is a content strategy, which I believe can be very powerful. And it's also understanding what you're going to write. To do that, you have to understand who you're writing for, the problems they have. You have to understand all that positioning stuff I spoke about before. And then there's a technical side of it, of course, which you may not want to do yourself. You may want to do it, but you really got to do that planning first. So you really got to understand exactly, get into the mind of your, the problem your, what do you call it, prospect or customer's having, or client, and then build a website that actually answers questions for them. Like it could be a blog, it could be a lot of things. So I don't know if that really answers the question that well, but let me just back up a bit here. If you're going to get started, I believe you have to get clarity first. That's pretty much in a nutshell what I believe.
So understanding who you're speaking to, who your customers are. So you have to know that so that you can focus, I guess, on your message.
Yes, messaging is very important. Sorry.
And then from there, if you really don't want to do it, then how would you go about finding the right person to do that for you?
Well, at the first level, you want to look at their samples of the work to make sure that they're actually producing websites that you could live with. You also want to, here's a few questions you want to really nail down on, and that's what tools they're using to build your website. You need to know the platform they're using. If they're using WordPress, for example, you need to know what plugins they're using, how easy it'll be. Not necessarily the plugins per se, but how easy it'll be for you to edit that site without them. You don't want to be held hostage to your web designer. And that's a big thing I've seen over the years, people being held hostage to web designers. So there's also something else, that some plugins for WordPress and other sites might have a licensing fee. So you've got to understand, are they going to pay for it as a developer? And are you going to pay them to maintain it? Or are you going to, pay for it out of your pocket and not rely on them. And it's fine either way. There's no right or wrong. But and one last thing is the hosting. Who's going to host it? Are you going to get a hosting yourself? Is the domain name yours? You don't want the web designer to buy your domain name. You want to have control over that. And the hosting. You want to you might want them to host it for you, but it's totally up to you. You just got to be careful of those things and ask those questions.
You know that
in case they sideline you.
Right, and I agree with that totally, because with the customer that has the WordPress, she had asked me to, she noticed that it wasn't coming up in Google or Google search, and she also wanted me to add something or download a video. And since I was just managing it and I didn't create it, you know, she said, oh, go to this guy, he used to work on this. And it took like a week to have a response. So in this respect, she was held hostage to the guy who built it. And then he wouldn't even give much of the information to me to do because he didn't want me to mess up his baby. And it's like, yeah, but I'm trying to get work done.
Right.
You're not doing it anymore. So that is not a good, you know, I agree totally with you.
That actually happened to me with my site, Nanette. With my own site, when I started, I had somebody who another friend recommended, and he was really kind of a kid just starting out, and he was working for another company, but he would do it on the side. And since I needed something kind of inexpensively, he went ahead and bought the domain and everything under Tammy's Office Solutions. I didn't think anything of it because I didn't know that much at the time, you know. And then you know, I could never get in touch with him. He didn't live locally. I could never get any information from him. And so when we finally did get the build of the site, like 8 months later or more, we had to actually use Tammy's Offices instead of Tammy's Office Solutions. And that's how my name came about. Now it's available again. But it's just interesting, you know, because eventually it was available again. But it's interesting because you really can. And I always tell clients to make sure you get all of the credentials, because regardless if you're on great terms right now, and I wasn't on bad terms with this guy, but he was so busy and he just never get back to me. So it is so very important that from the beginning, either you set them or you definitely get those credentials. I've seen that over and over, Mark, as well. And like I said, it happened to me.
I agree. And when we build websites for clients, we give them all of the information at the end, as well as a tutorial in PDF. So if there's anything they need to do on the back end, or they want to do on the back end, or they want to manage it themselves, they get a tutorial on how to you know, work their way around on the back end, and we're always available for questions. As well as I had a recent real estate agent client we built a website for, but we don't do search engine optimization. And I have a relationship with someone who does the SEO, and he contacted me after she decided to work with him on SEO, and he asked me for the login information, you know, for the back end of her website. Now, she had that, but I guess she just, you know, sent him over to me, and I gladly gave it over. So I'm in there. We are in there managing her website, and we host it. She owns the domain name. She had it before she came to us. But then he gets in there and does the SEO, and it's a team effort.
That's great, Lisa, that you have somebody that helps you on that end. And definitely wait until the end to give it to the client, because we had somebody was going to go in and load some pictures. He wanted to do it himself, and he completely wiped out the website. So thank goodness for backup is all I can say. So you do have to be careful sometimes of when that all happens. It's just very interesting. So, you know, and I find every client's different, especially in the way they give you content, or if they have it, you know, all of those things. So, Lisa, did you have some more questions, or Nanette? Sorry.
I wanted to ask you, Mark, you know, these new, I don't know what to call it, the website, the internet, I guess the search engines are asking for HTTPS for security. And they are warning visitors of sites that don't have HTTPS. What are your thoughts on that? Should that only be for e-commerce or websites that are taking payments and have are taking on that contact information or credit card information, payment information, or should we all go across the board with all of the hacking going on and people's websites being wiped out from hackers and all of us go to HTTPS? I'd like your thoughts on that.
Okay, sure. Well, we all know Google's strong arming us into going to HTTPS. So for that, you need a valid SSL certificate, and you know there's much easier to get one these days. The problem is, I guess you have to change. If you don't have HTTPS right now, you have to do a change to make everything HTTPS. But let me just gather my thoughts here. So the problem, no, what was I going to say? Can you just ask the question? I just forgot what you asked.
Well, I know too, even just for my own site, Lisa, because I have an ebook on there, you know, I felt it was important regardless because of Google. And then if I go to a site and I'm going to download, I want to know it's secure and not buggy also. But Mark, go ahead, complete your thought, please.
Okay, I remember what I was saying now. So every time you see a form on the internet, that is there's a possibility if it's HTTP and it's not HTTPS that a sniffer, it's called a sniffer, will be able to get the data you entered into that form. So if you enter your credit card details with a HTTP and not with the S, and no certificate and all that sort of good stuff, there's a chance that somebody spying on the web can get the information. HTTPS offers a form of encryption, which makes it much harder to steal that information. So even for logins, like logging into WordPress, I guess it's a safe way to, even if you have HTTPS or that, it probably makes it harder for people to steal your credentials. It makes it harder for people to get your email through contact forms. It's all about forms and, you know, security with forms. But the credit card's very important. Very important you don't use HTTP with credit card. Sorry.
We have,
Right.
I know, and for those of you who don't know, Mark is coming to us from 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning over there. So I would be asleep. So I'm just thrilled that you're awake and able to answer some. I wanted to just give a shout out to, we have Michael Mann in the audience, and he is a web developer. And he agrees with you totally, Mark. He said, and for any site collecting information, it should be for any site collecting information at a minimum. And we all know the freebie rule and how to collect to get your email gold list, and all of those things are so important now. And so, you know, like you said, those forms, even if you're not putting credit card, like, I mean, just for me, I have an ebook and I want people to feel comfortable to come to my site. And Google is now putting up the big block and everything else. So how many people are going to even feel comfortable going to that site, even if it is safe?
The only flip side to that is SEO can suffer if you've got a good SEO rating, I guess, and there's a balance between SEO and security. It's like SEO will improve HTTPS, but for the intermediate moment when you change over, there will be that problem where your Google will be indexing the old HTTP, and it just gets a bit messy. But you have to do certain redirects and a few different certain wildcard things to offset that. So there is a bit of a process too, transferring over to HTTPS.
Very interesting, because I wasn't aware of that, and I know my Google Analytics took a hit recently, and it probably has to do with that. Thank you, Mark.
Would you say, you know, because what I found when I was looking into SSL certificates, it can be expensive. So I was looking at like a workaround. So if I say I want to do offer a download of a PDF or something, my website is not HTTPS with the SSL, but I make a landing page with another company that people can go to that does. That could be a workaround. Do you see any downside of that?
Well, a lot of people, no, I don't see too much of a downside. I was told in a comment once by a professional web developer that it probably won't help your rankings if you've got, you know how Google is now ranking people less who don't have HTTPS? Well, you'll probably still get slapped by Google, but at least that page that's HTTP is protecting your audience. So that's my comment on that, I guess, is feedbacking what he said to me.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, with having the landing page, and I know everybody does this, isn't the goal, I mean, I know the goal is to get the audience and everything, but you know, like when I work with social media clients, the first thing I do is look at their website, because if our goal is to push people to the site, I need to know they have a good site that's ready for people to come. And so I mean, yeah, I'm a little curious about that, the landing pages versus getting them to the website and all of that. Now, Michael did also add, check if your host offers Let's Encrypt if you are looking for free SSL. That's another way to go. And I also know there's different levels of it. So some of them start out a little less, like a couple hundred, and go on up to thousands, I believe. So yeah, there's a few different options.
I want somebody to go through the website, but you know, some people have to go to the website to get to a landing page anyway. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
not like you have to make them go through the pages and then get to the part where it says, if you want this, you know, click here, and then it brings them to a landing page and they can download.
True. Very true.
But you're right. I would look at the hosting to see if they have it. I think that a lot of these hosting pages, some of them do have them. I know for me, like the CMSs are slow to provide the service that they say it's coming,
right?
But it's just not here yet. And I think they're going to get a hit on that by people because it's becoming important.
Well, they knew it almost a year ahead of time. So I mean, we all knew it was coming. But I know for me, the people that handled my website, actually, I had to continue to ask about this because I didn't want the hit or people being turned away, especially because it was right around the time I released the ebook, of course. And so in the end, though, after a few back and forth trying to get it and figuring out how to, you know, what to do, they actually upgraded it for free for me. So it might be that, you know, they had enough inertia or whatever with the hosting site, and maybe they were giving them a deal on it for all of their sites. I don't know the back end of that, but I do know that they did upgrade mine to that.
Well, Tammy, going on what Mike said about the Let's Encrypt, that is actually open source software, which is actually it's the first free SSL certificate type thing. So a lot of hosting companies can take that on board, and I don't think it costs them because it's open source. I think they just have to implement it. So go on.
So the web designer has to put it in and everything is what you mean? Is that what you mean by that?
No, what I mean is a lot of the hosting companies, like Mike said, will actually have that SSL certificate ready to install with a click on the cPanel. And because it's free, all you have to do is install it through a one-click button. And SiteGround does that. And I really love the way it does it. But one drawback, I don't know if this is because it's Let's Encrypt or not, and somebody else might know, but when I view it on my mobile phone, the HTTPS doesn't seem to, with Android's native web browser, it doesn't seem to allow me in to view it. It thinks it's something wrong. So that's something I have to look into. But I don't know if that's because it's Let's Encrypt or because it's got less encryption or something. I don't know.
That is a huge issue, though. That is because, I mean, it's proven the large majority of people are now doing it from mobile devices. So if it's not coming up well or at all, that is a big issue then if it's not working that way. Michael added a comment, said, yeah, the host needs to integrate it and do the magic for the renewing it. But that, you know, like you said, if maybe they'll get better at that, maybe it's something they're going to improve on. But for now, that could be a big issue for many clients, I would think.
I think it's just my Android web browser. I think I'll blame Android.
I don't know. I wonder if trying from an iPhone would work.
Yeah, I might do that actually. Yeah,
we'll have to experiment. Okay, we'll have to experiment. Now I've lost track because we got off track there, but it's a good conversation and one that's necessary. So Lisa, I think you were asking some questions, I believe.
Okay, let's see. So tell us, Mark, in your opinion, what are some of the best ways to drive traffic to our websites?
Okay, so my traffic originally it came from referral, now it mainly comes from Facebook groups, believe it or not. People, because I've added, and as Tammy could tell you, because I've added a lot of help people with their problems in Facebook groups, a lot of people are actually looking at my Facebook page, which I have linked to my personal profile, and then they're going to my website and checking me out. So a large amount of traffic comes from Facebook. Others comes from referrals. And because I'm very active in some forums, some will come from those forums too, like VA networking. So they're my big traffic sources. Now it's just a matter of fine-tuning my lead magnet and getting it to convert better.
It's funny that you said that, because that was the route I took. I went to your Facebook page, and then I went to your website.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Yeah, so that's definitely proves it's working passively almost. I'm going to start doing Facebook Lives as well. So sorry.
Yes, Facebook Lives as well. That's true. Nanette, Tammy, do y'all have questions?
I just think that it's good to talk about how to get traffic, because I think a lot of people who are just starting out, they say, okay, I need a website, and you get it, and then they don't do anything. Don't realize that there's more than just having your website up. They think, oh, people will come, and it's not necessarily so. Because if you
build it, and they will come.
Exactly. If you're not active on social media sites and I'm notorious for this. I don't blog, but I'm trying to get into the blogging. But if you don't do those things, you're not going to be found. You have to be active, and that helps with the page too. So.
And I find too that different industries, draw traffic in different ways as well. And I find it interesting because when a client will call me, a prospective client, I always ask them, how did you find out about us? So it's very interesting. Sometimes it is a search, they're looking for somebody in the area maybe. So a local search and a lot of times it is through the social media sites and things like that, or referral like Mark's saying. But I do find that it was very important to have a website simply, even if I wasn't drawing traffic in those ways, if I was getting referrals or other things, it just kind of creates a verification that somebody's legitimate. They really have a website. They're really doing this kind of thing. Sometimes, depending on the work, it is that you're doing, I find that it gives a sort of trust factor, helps in that area as well. At least it seems with our services anyway, to be able to do that. So for me, I think it's, like you said, important in that they have that site up. And I know, Mark, we wanted to talk a little bit about pricing too before we get too carried away with everything else.
Sure.
And I know Mark does have a great special right now that he's doing on his site. But what kind of pricing should we expect? I know too, I tell clients, depending on what type of site, if it's a services versus e-commerce, huge difference. But
Huge
what
difference
kind of
indeed.
pricing should people expect?
Okay, well, it also depends on whether the person has a team and they're doing consultation. Like, there's actually, like, a lot of people at WP Elevation will teach about consultation websites, where you're actually, not websites, but you're actually giving that advice as well. You're helping them solve a problem. So let's look at the higher end of the scale first for a service-based website. And let's say if you're a business, you might pay $10,000. This is just a higher end level. You might pay $20,000 for an e-commerce at a higher end level, and that should include consulting, problem solving, helping you with strategies. For me, I'm somewhat of a web mechanic, but I also do a bit of problem solving. So when I do a custom website, it's typically in the $2,000 range. There are websites I have right now which are what would you say? I got pre-packaged websites right now, and that uses technology that makes it a lot easier. So I can actually do that for under 1,000 and still profit. If you get somebody offshore, obviously you can get a lot cheaper. There's that communication barrier as well, which, that is something you have to consider. But it's all about your budget and about how much hand-holding you want, in my opinion. So I would say anywhere between $500 for probably an offshore custom design to $20,000 for an e-commerce site that's got all the trimmings and all the hand-holding and stuff.
Right. And I find
it's really hard to price.
Like the e-commerce membership sites also are quite tricky, wouldn't you say? It's not just about a simple plug-in or this or that. It can really be kind of tricky as well. So that, I would think, would be in the mid-range as well or something.
Well, here's the thing. Even I decided not to reinvent the wheel, so I don't actually code from scratch. I actually use a lot of page builders and use my design skills now. But even doing that is still not a small task. It might take up to 20, 30 hours just to even build those pages, to get the client, just hold the client's hand through the process, That's for a custom design. Then there's the communication between the client. We don't ever consider that as being part of the top. Well, we do if we're smart, and you guys are very smart. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of toing and fromming, so you got to take that into account. But yeah, basically it can take 20+ hours to do a page builder, even not coding. Yeah, at least.
Yeah, at least, especially depending on if you have a client that's forthcoming with all the information. To me, that's been the hardest part a lot of times, is getting them to give you the information you need sometimes, or the content. And so I know a lot of people will build sites or put sites out that basically they do the content and everything because they don't want to have to wait on the client. What do you think about that?
I definitely. So what you said, a lot of people put sites out there without waiting for the content using placeholders. Is that what you mean? No.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, they'll have packages that include content because they don't want to wait for the client. Right. Because a lot of times clients, at least in our industry, can take a while because they're so busy by the time they get to us. They should have been here 6 to 8 months earlier or more. So they're so busy, they don't have time to stop and write the content and get you everything. So I know people who will just have the whole package and include that. And then the client can review and approve and change at that point. What do you think?
I think it depends on the client's industry. I definitely don't think a coach should be outsourcing their IP, if you know what I mean. But I definitely think that some small businesses can, like industries and all that, can do it. But I know coaches can, probably outsource a bit with their content, but I do think that if you're an authority site, you really do need to be in control of your content. But other than that, I do also agree that you can outsource certain parts of your content. You can get help with a structure, all that sort of stuff. And, it's not a black and white area. As it's a gray area.
Definitely. And everybody's different. VAs are all different. Web designers and web developers, and clients, of course, are all different. And it's a different mix depending on what you get in there. But I think definitely if you're having to provide content and pictures and all of that, it definitely adds to the pricing.
Definitely.
Lisa, did you have any other questions, Nanette?
No, I just like this conversation. I many times when I do get a client that wants a website, they don't even know what to say. They really want one, but they don't know what to say. Or they never take the time to think about the message, who their customers are. So I have to give them a series of questions for them to ask. What's your vision? What's your passion? What is it? And so I'm getting to the point where that has to be part of the price.
Absolutely.
Because if I'm doing that research for you and I'm pulling this out of you so you can really understand your brand and what you're about, that's huge.
Absolutely.
And that's not something you give away,
No. Yeah, that's like the first step for me too, Nanette, is I have a form they have to complete and get back to me before we even start on that. But yeah, I understand what you're saying there.
I have add-on prices. If they want us to help with content, it's so much an hour. If they're wanting us to just add a paragraph or two, maybe on the home page as a welcome or something like that, we can throw that in there. But if we're doing pages of content, then that is an add-on charge. Photos as well, because some of the photos would need to be paid for, so that cost would be offset to the client.
Agree with you, Lisa, there. Mark, I also wanted to ask, because we are talking about teams today and websites with teams on them. And I know this can be dependent upon your company as well, the individual company. What do you think about like adding your team to the website with pictures and their experience and things like that? Or do you think we're subcontractors we're talking about, not necessarily employees? So, or do you think it's not necessary for multi-team companies, or what do you think?
I think it has its cons and pros. I think it can show a level of transparency when you show you have got a team. But I also think, well, if somebody gets fired, for example, it might not be a good look to remove them from the website and have to explain. But I don't have anything against putting team members up. Look, if I had a full team, I'd put them up, but I have to really have a good relationship with that team to make sure that they should be can be front and center on the website as a team, and also that I can rely on them. Because the other problem is, if they're not reliable, somebody could probably go to their social profile and get your business off you behind your back. That's always a worry. There's cons and pros to both. So my recommendation would be to get to know the person really well. Maybe have them on your team for a few years. I don't know what the other people think, but you need to have that trust with the team as well as giving that trust to the community.
I agree. Trust is so huge. And I know for us, one of the things we always talk about and talked about from the beginning for our audience is having that, confidentiality and, all of those things, non-disclosure, all of that is in there, and non-competes, all of those clauses that are in there. So once they are on the team, really they shouldn't be doing that, as far as getting behind your back and everything. And honestly, I've had my company for 10 years, and this is the first year that I began to put them on. I have a great team I trust and I love working with. And so this is the first year I actually decided, okay, we're going to put them on there and let people see who we work with, and, who's also. I was just curious though, because, it'll be interesting to see, how that plays out.
I don't think.
Go
ahead.
What's that?
People like a what?
So people like behind the scenes. The customers like to get a look at your behind the scenes. They love peeking behind the curtain.
True. And transparency. I mean, I always tell my clients, it's in the contract too, that I have a team, and that a subcontractor may be handling some of the work and things like that. But I think it just adds another layer to that trust as well, maybe.
Yeah, but I agree with you, like waiting as long as you did before you did, and you knew you had a lot of their work in the back, working with you for quite some time, and now you can trust them to put the picture up. I wouldn't want to be in a position where I'm constantly taking a picture down, putting another one up, because that's not going to look good.
No. Yeah. I think in the beginning, when I first started building a team, that was the hard thing, was finding people that would be consistent and stay on the team, as well as you wanting them to work with your clients. I think that's definitely something, maybe even another discussion we have one day, but yeah, definitely. I think finding a good team is very hard. And then once you do, I think it's okay to, but I think it takes time to do that, So yeah.
I've
Go
been
ahead, Lisa.
fortunate. I've only taken down two people from who I put on the website. I do wait a little while, and I want to vet them, have them work with a few clients, see how their efficiency is, meeting deadlines and things like that. They may be considered a team member, but I don't put them on the website until I'm comfortable in knowing that they're going to stick with me and, be a valuable partner.
Excellent. Mark, we're getting low on time, but one of the other questions we did have for you was, what are some characteristics and what are some things we should be looking for when, say we're going to have somebody else build our site? What are those things that we should look for when we're looking for that person?
Well, we covered a similar in another question. I can't remember what it was. We're talking about the plugins and about having paid plugins, like who owns a license. Is that what you're talking about, that question that we spoke about earlier?
No. I meant, if I'm going to hire you or anybody else to build my site, what kind of, what am I going to look for in a person? Like, am I going to, look at just strictly at their site and how theirs looks, or examples, or am I going to just, count on talking to you and building trust? What are the things that I'm going to look for in a web developer or designer?
Typically, you'll want to follow them around their website, look at their blog posts, see how much of a specialist they are. You'll also, just see their personality. The biggest thing is personality and attitude. You really want to get along well with them. As I said, I don't want to make it look like I'm repeating myself, but you also want to make sure they're honest and ethical, but they're also not trapping you, as we said before, trapping you into having to rely on them to make small edits. You want to have that freedom. So maybe you don't want that freedom, but even if you want to have somebody else come in if they ever leave you and be able to take over. So you can't, you really want them to just keep, I don't know how to explain any better than this, but just keep the technology and the process to something that is not patent it. You know the word I mean.
Right.
Something
I
that they don't
imagine
come up with.
too, reviews are a big part of that, or testimonials. Do you have those on your site, or just count
Yes,
on Google?
I do have testimonials on my site. I see what you mean. You talk about how to build credibility.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood your question. I thought it was the same question as before. That's why I got
Oh,
confused.
I'm sorry. No, I do repeat myself sometimes, but
So basically, for me, I do have testimonials. It's proof factors. I do have. I recently had a portfolio up but because I'm trying to sell prepackaged websites, I didn't put the portfolio up anymore. I'm going to put it back up because it still proves I've done work for people like VA Networking, like Sarah Center Crochet. You know, I've done work for a lot of these people, and I put it on my website before, and I should put it up there again because these are names that, you know, people probably know in the industry that I work in.
right.
So I definitely will get that back up. But what other factors can you have? Like a blog, obviously, if you answer questions of people asking on your blog, then
And I guess too, like you were talking about, a lot of your traffic comes from Facebook groups, so building trust within the group and things of that nature. Imagine would be. We only have a few minutes left. I just want to make sure if there's any questions in the audience. Hi, Colette. Want to give a shout out to you. So glad to have you here today. And if there's any other questions or comments, we'd love to get to you. Colette says that she's on multiple websites as a subcontractor. We were talking about listing your team. She said she's actually on there. So on many different sites. You know, the other thing is with that too, do you link them to their own site, you know, on your site? So, you know, there's a lot of questions, you know, that can go into that. It might be something we talk about in the future even. Any other comments or things you can think of, Mark, that maybe we haven't discussed that might be important in either building or outsourcing a website to somebody?
I think you covered it pretty well, but I would say stick to your work. If you're doing the work yourself, you want to stick to your own workflow. You don't want to keep changing. Like, for example, I use Genesis, I use Beaver Builder. I don't deviate when I work with clients and when I work for my own websites. The problem with deviating is you lose that ability to, you know, you're reinventing the wheel almost. You're trying to find two different workflows. So I try and keep to one workflow. And that's my biggest advice when you're creating your own site or somebody else's site as a multi-VA company, is to have a workflow that your team adheres to. That's what I do with mine. Yeah.
And again, goes back to what we've talked about before in other sessions about the processes and systems you have and how important that is in really documenting those things too, for your team especially. So yeah, that is important, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other comments or questions, ladies?
Well, once you have your website up, I guess the only other question I have is how many changes, how big changes should you make? Because you always hear people say that, you know, you can't make, you can't just create it and then forget it. So what would you suggest is a good practice with your website to keep it fresh, to have it noticed by Google without really making huge changes?
Great question.
That's a good question. So there's often a recommendation of a dynamic front page, and that's not necessarily meaning your front page is your blog, but it does mean you can have like your recent 4 blog posts on the front page, and that will keep the site fresh. You do want to keep blogging, obviously, to keep it in the, like with the sitemap, if people know what that is. Will tell Google, it'll give Google a sense of how often you update if you're blogging. You might have
it has to be on the home site. Excuse me, does it have to be on the home page, or is it okay if it's on its own page?
Yes, it's fine on the same page. All I was saying about the home page, you might want to have featured blog posts as a section.
I see.
Honestly, I don't have that on my website, but some people suggest you do that. And as long as you're blogging, though, Google will start getting used to indexing your site more often because it knows that your site is active. If you leave it sit and stagnate and don't change things, Google sort of knows. It has this, whenever something's updated, if the right SEO plugins, it gives it a last updated status. And that is a big green light for Google to say, well, this person is active.
Yeah. I feel like I'm always in there working on mine, changing and tweaking things. And we had a big update recently because I started our all-in-one, services that we provide for
Right.
businesses. But yeah, so I feel like I'm always on there, but I think, going back to that question, the consistency, everybody always talks about that, being consistent in what you do and having that blog consistently and changing, whether you're changing other pages or not. It's huge.
And
So,
a little tweak, I guess, like adding a sentence or something would, if it's for a good reason, you're not just going in there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like it's always a work in progress, and times change so much, and software changes and everything else. So, well, Mark, I think we've kept you up long enough, and we kept you awake.
That's all right. Sorry if I got a bit incoherent, but it's just
No, you were fine. Are you kidding? At 3 a.m, I no guarantee what I would say. So you gave us a lot of great information.
Yes.
Is that if anybody is in, I'm not like pitching anything, but if anybody's interested in the worksheet I have, I'm definitely happy to throw out a link to that.
Okay.
Or, or put it in the show notes. I said, if anybody's interested in the website clarity worksheet that'll help you get clarity, I'm happy to either put that in the show notes or link to it.
That'd be wonderful. Yes, if you would do that, that'd be awesome. We would love that. And I know our audience would love it as well as maybe some of the links that you talked about, like the pay-free profiler and Genesis Beaver Builder and all of those things. Yeah, if we can link some of those, that would be awesome. So
yeah, that's actually in the sheet itself. So
great.
Let me just
you already thought ahead.
I did think ahead just in case people were interested. Hang on.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, just put it out there under the comments, and that'd be wonderful. We can also share it on our Facebook page as well.
That link goes to it.
Yeah, our Facebook group.
So I'll just check that, but I think that'll work.
That's wonderful.
Awesome.
I appreciate it, Mark, very much. Thank you so much for everything. Any other comments or questions, ladies?
No, it's been great. Thank you so much for staying up late with us.
I know. Mark,
yeah,
the link
we're getting up early, however you want to look at it. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. You're a wealth of information.
Thank you. I appreciate getting to know you all better and being on the show.
Yes, thank you so much, Mark. And we'll let you get back to bed now. And
I never went.
I know, right? Sometimes it's just better. Go get some coffee. But thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. And that link did work fine, by the way, so that's great. We can have our audience get into that as well and share it also on our, like I said, on our Facebook group, because we have the VA to VA Facebook group. If there's no other comments or anything, that's it for today. We appreciate everybody watching and look forward to joining you again next month. And keep a lookout on some exciting things always coming up soon. Everybody have a wonderful day. And Nanette, I turn it over to you to close it out.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.